Hello and thanks for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. Out of all the gun-related news content out there, we're definitely one of them, and we know it. We're doing our best to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge our way around YouTube's algorithms. If you walk without rhythm, you won't attract the worm, and the last thing we want is the robot worm deciding our content is wrongthink. One of the best things you can do to help this video perform is to comment early and often, so I have hidden a secret phrase somewhere in this video. When you find it, be the first person to post it in the YouTube comment section and we'll give you a free t-shirt. This week, we've got beef between the mayor of Chi-Town and the governor of Mississippi, the gun rights battle on Hoth, and a court ruling that allows Defense Distributed to sue the New Jersey Attorney General. So just relax and try not to squirm. This won't take long. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you about the simple home-crafted night vision products at tnvc.com. Made by simple Amish operators from fine mahogany and leather in the traditional fashion, just like your grandma used to make. If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, tnvc.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night. Californistan Tribal Chief Gavin Newsom released a statement on the defeat of the long-standing ban on standard capacity magazines in the Ninth Circuit that we reported on last week. He stammered about several other failed Californian gun control laws and lamented at how entirely ineffectual those laws were, though it seemed he implied he supports even further restrictions despite their obvious inefficacy. He did admit that guns don't actually kill people, but then took a sharp turn off into the weeds with his avant-garde theory that bullets cause murder, not the person holding the gun, stabby thing, or candlestick in the study. He went on to stutter about his inability to distinguish between rights and privileges.
Privilege/right.
And he incoherently rambled about how magazines should be banned because guns require background checks. I mean, it's really hard to follow this guy, but it sounds like he's trying to say that even though Californistan has some of the most oppressive laws in the country, including background checks on guns and ammo, none of that was really working. He almost seems to suggest that no amount of government meddling is capable of changing the hearts of man, but every time he seems poised to grasp truth, he loses focus and returns to his vomit. And in case you're wondering, Gavin did not disappoint. He did indeed play one of your favorite classics,
Large capacity magazine clips.
He finished up by admitting he hadn't actually read the decision and would have a statement in the future when he has something to say.
I haven't had the chance to read the decision. It just came out. When I do, I'll have a chance to respond in detail to your question.
But he also affirmed his support for locking people in cages for having a plastic box, and finished with the appeal to the masses fallacy by saying the majority of Calistanis agreed with Kalipazine bans. So here's the thing, Gavin. The entire point of having a constitution is for precisely the argument you're making. It's to protect a minority from would-be tin-pot dictators and mobs. It's to prevent authoritarian autocrats from passing laws that infringe on fundamental human rights, no matter how many people agree. Because without constitutional limits, democracy is two wolves and a sheep arguing over dinner plans, so say we all. The mayor of Chiraq, Lori Lightfoot, whined on MSNBC's Morning Joe that the rampant crime and violence that has plagued her city for decades has nothing to do with her or the decades of authoritarian gun policy there. No, her city isn't a charred and desolate wasteland because of the policies within that city. It's because Mississippi isn't oppressive enough. Yeah, so Jackson, Mississippi has a population that's just a thin red one, short of 3 million, while Chiraq has a population of about 2.7 million, not counting the rats. Now, any thinking person would rightly point out there are a myriad of other social, economic, geographic, and other variables besides population, not to mention variations in reporting and classification that make direct comparisons of cities somewhat pointless. But the violent crime rate in Jackson is 733 per 100,000 residents, while the violent crime rate in Chiraq is over 900. Again, it is stupid to pretend gun policy is the only factor in play, but if Mississippi's gun policy were to blame for Chiraq's violent culture, wouldn't we expect a comparable city in Mississippi to suffer substantially more? Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves was a little less verbose than me in his Twitter response, but that's what the tweets is for, right? Reeves clapped back, "The Chicago mayor says Mississippians are to blame for the out-of-control violence plaguing her city. It's a pathetic excuse for the failure of left-wing experiments in undermining police and letting criminals run free." Now, you know I prefer to separate myself from the left-right paradigm, instead focusing on the y-axis of the political spectrum, and as I mentioned, there are probably some other factors in motion, but not anything that would fit in 280 characters, so I proclaim this a solid burn. Tate Reeves wins. Flawless victory. Fatality. But it's not all sunshine and unicorns in Mississippi. Local government oppression enthusiast and Jackson City Council member Aaron Banks is advocating for a year-long moratorium on gun shows in order to, wait for it, investigate gun shows. Aside from the minor detail that it may be challenging to investigate vendors at gun shows if you shut down gun shows, Banks seems to be totally oblivious to the fact that Mississippi has a preemption clause which prevents municipalities from interfering in the right of the people to keep and bear arms. So even if it wasn't a patently absurd and internally inconsistent idea, it would still be illegal. That's why I want you to pause the video right now and call Mr. Banks at 601-960-1089. Tell him he's wrong for trying to shut down gun shows, and tell him the last time Jackson tried this garbage, former Attorney General Jim Hood was quite clear when he said the mayor may not lawfully ban gun shows. As always, be polite and courteous. Vitriol never changes minds. Do you want to hear some good news in the gun rights fight?
Sure, we all do. We all do.
Defense Distributed can sue the New Jersey Attorney General for attempting to violate their First Amendment rights by passing a law that makes it a crime to publish the plans to make a gun and attempting to enforce it against DD. Back in 2018, New Jersey Attorney General Gerber Grewal threatened to prosecute DD even though they are located in Texas, which the more astute among you might note is not actually inside of New Jersey. So Defense Distributed sued. That's been tied up in the courts, but last week, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decided the suit can continue in Texas courts. Cody Wilson, founder of Defense Distributed, said, "We look forward to Grewal explaining to a Texas judge how his corrupt state's laws control Texans' speech." It's a small victory, and DD will still have to prove their case in court against New Jersey, but it matters. For the time being, DD is still not publishing gun plans on the internet because they are tied up in other litigation. It is my sincere hope that Defense Distributed will come out the other side of this with wheelbarrows full of cash and recognition of their right to publish weapon plans. For that matter, I believe the U.S. government has a responsibility to publish the technical data packages of all U.S. small arms. We bought those designs. We, the people. That knowledge belongs to us. As I've always said, you can't stop the signal. Once something is on the interwebs, it is always there. You may as well try to empty a lake with a bucket as try to erase something from the internet. But end users shouldn't have to scour dark web forums to find the files. They should be freely and publicly available. Attempts to stifle the sharing of information are even more insidious than attempts to disarm the people. After all, ideas are the most devastating weapons. This looks as good a place as any to drop today's secret phrase. The first person to post the phrase, "skin that smoke wagon," in the YouTube comments gets a free t-shirt. May the odds be ever in your favor. We Americans are an undeniably awesome people, but the sheer power and brilliance of our awesomeness often shines so brightly we are distracted from the plight of less fortunate peoples living under oppressive regimes. Remember that gun rights are for all people, even Canadians. Just because they never had the huevos to shoot redcoats in the face or the foresight to enshrine the right to bear arms in their supreme law of the land doesn't mean they don't have the right to self-determination like all people. Despite their beady little eyes and flappy little heads, Canadians are people too. When the Emperor of Canada, Justin Trudeau, declared an arbitrary and unilateral ban on semi-auto firearms back in April, gun rights groups mobilized to fight it in court. Canuckistanis have so far contributed over 300,000 Canadian pesos to the legal fund to challenge the new ban in the Great White North, with about 85% of that loot coming from British Columbia, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. That's solidly impressive for folks who have to slit open a tauntaun's belly just to make it through the night, I think. But it's well short of at least $1 million that Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights projects that it will need to fight this fight, so let's give them a hand, eh? If you believe in the right of all people to bear arms regardless of the accident of birth and you want to put your caps where your mouth is, please pause the video right now and go to firearmsrights.ca/donate and give generously. Well, friends, it's getting late and my ride's about to turn back into a pumpkin. If you like watching these videos half as much as we enjoy making them, please help trigger that algorithm section by engaging with this and every other GunTuber video as much as you are able. Like, share, comment, email to that annoying ant. Hey, you could even click the subscribe button, but I don't think it really does anything anymore. And if you want to support us in a more material manner, consider getting some of the fly threads in our Teespring store or by supporting our sponsor, tnvc.com, your source for everything you need to make you the bump in the night. But please don't ever feel like you owe us a thing. The support you give just by being stubborn enough to make it to the end of this video is immeasurable. I love you.